Perfect. Recording, all sweet there. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces as well from our previous episodes. That's sweet. We got Jared Osborne in the house making dinner, multitasking. There we go. For those that don't know, we lost Jared. We lost Jared to Volleyball Australia, so he got a little bit of an upgrade. So nice to see a familiar face. It's fantastic.
I mean, I'm not sorry that we got Jared now.
nor should
Pretty
you
good.
be. No, that was a good pickup. That's an all-star pickup, and for everybody who played in our beach volleyball tour this summer knows that that's an all-star pickup, big time.
Sure is.
Yeah, we're now fingers crossed that we can hop in the sand as soon as possible. And we got some of our senior Phoenix athletes, see some Razzie athletes, some juniors and some youth, which is awesome. Am I seeing any senior Phoenix jerseys out there? Katarina, are you wearing the senior? No, you're not wearing the senior Phoenix jersey. Okay, only for the workouts, I guess. That's
the girls didn't decide on a color today.
It's been awesome. We've been doing some workouts, some body weight workouts twice a week. And all the Phoenix athletes have been wearing their jerseys. So really been appreciative of that.
Nice.
Lauren, how are we looking in terms of numbers? I know we were at a certain number beforehand. Have we increased that?
Yeah, we're at 57.
57. Brilliant. Okay. Well, we've increased in a few numbers, and I think that will continue to happen. But just out of respect of everybody's time, let's rock and roll, as they would say. So Martin Reeder here, head of Pathways. This is the concluding episode right now of a stream of Athlete Insight series. We've had a couple great conversations with athletes, but we're going to take a little bit of a spin today. And then we're going to look to repackage this and bring this into a program, these online sessions. But for now, we're concluding what was a great run with athletes and bring it more into a program specific conversation with the head coach of the AVA beach volleyball, Anna Meijnderts. I hopefully said that right.
Nice, nailed it.
Perfect. There's the Dutch in me, although we spoke about forgetting the J. We are very grateful to have Anna with us this evening to talk about the AVA. It's really been a hot topic amongst our programs. A lot of athletes have been emailing, sending in questions, and it was really great for us to have a chat with Arash, Nemo, Ethan, and each one of them spoke about the importance of the AVA in their development. So I thought it was a really great idea for us to come around and speak with Anna about the program itself. And the goal really here is to give you as athletes, or there may be some coaches here as well, just a really good picture about what happens there. And we're going to take a few different lenses. So the first part, we're going to talk about the program. That's more the details off of the court. Then we're going to speak a little bit towards the beach and the indoor side and how those things mix together and what some of the focuses are as a program. Then we'll talk about the application process, and then we'll conclude with some of the pathway activities and engagements outside of the AVA. So that's going to be our top level. So what I'll do is let's bring Anna into the conversation. Hey, Anna, would you be able to just introduce yourself just a little bit and say hello?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Martin. I'm really excited to be here. So my name's Anna. I'm part of the AVA since 20 months now. I'm originally Dutch, so I hope you can sort of see through my accent a little bit there. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here. And I've worked with some really great New South Wales athletes in the past, so I'm super keen to see who else is out there in New South Wales.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot of keen athletes who are very interested. So really looking forward to getting into it. So let's just start off with a very nice top level overview of the AVA. If you could sum up the AVA relatively lightly, and then we'll dive in a little bit. What is the AVA?
So the Australian Volleyball Academy is basically a full-time training environment based at the AIS in Canberra. So what that means is the AIS obviously is the pinnacle of sport in Australia. So we have many sports on site like basketball, netball, and volleyball is just another sport on site. So we have a beach volleyball, indoor volleyball facility there that is top notch. And yeah, we train every day.
Sounds like a dream. In fact, we were just up there recently for a little AIS challenge. So we brought our senior Phoenix athletes up there, had some great games, and I actually got to come in and check out the beach volleyball courts and was very impressed. And I, oddly enough, trained in the beach volleyball facility in Holland. Not is Alsmeer? No, it wasn't Alsmeer. Where was it? I think it was in one of the, maybe it was your national team, but it's bigger than the Dutchies, and they got some big bodies in there. But the facility was quite big. I was super impressed with that. So let's understanding we're training daily. Maybe let's go right in and let's narrow in on what does a day look like for an AVA athlete.
Yeah, so obviously, I guess we work week by week. So we've got few big pillars of our program, and our first one is taking care of the body. So we have our strength and conditioning. So we do strength and conditioning 3 times a week, which is generally our Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, where we lift weights, but also really try to become more coordinated in certain movements. So it's not just about getting crazy strong, but we actually want to become better athletes while we're at it. And then we have rehab sessions once a week in which our physio takes us through the different exercises we need to do to keep the body healthy and strong and prevent injuries. So that's the physical side of things. And then the volleyball side of things, obviously we are playing volleyball every day of the work week and then usually Sundays. So Saturdays for us is a day off. Any other day, you could be on the beach or you could be on the hard court. But whatever you're doing, you're definitely playing volleyball.
Love it. And are there potentially days where you're doing a beach session and an indoor session, or are you guys keeping the disciplines separate?
You'll mix them up heaps. And that's actually the way we like it. So we're very individual. So every athlete will have a slightly different ratio in terms of beach and indoor. But it could very well be possible that you're on the beach on Tuesday morning and on the hard court on Tuesday evening. And actually, once you get used to that, it's really easy to switch surfaces, and it makes it less awkward as well in terms of different skills required and all of that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, you said a word that I'm really happy you said was individual. Sometimes you could go into an air quote academy and you just do the same thing that everybody does. And we all know that everybody's unique, right? So can we talk about that? You spoke about S&C, you spoke a little bit about physio and recovery. How do you guys prioritize the individual athlete? And that might even be meetings with coaches. How do you work with the individual?
Yeah, for sure. I think people come to the AVA for individual development. You're not there to join a team. You're there for you. And in the process, you'll become a good teammate. And you'll help others, and you learn how to be effective in giving feedback and taking some leadership and ownership. But in the end, you're there for you. So you'll notice that you'll have meetings with different coaches to help you track your progress. And you'll have an individualized program in the sense that everyone who comes in will do at least 50% beach volleyball, if not more. That's our bottom line, because beach volleyball is our priority. But then the rest of it will obviously depend on, for example, do you really enjoy playing indoor? Do we think that maybe you have a future in both surfaces? Or do we think that maybe you might become a really good indoor player someday? Then we'll put you on the indoor a little bit more than if we think you're really going to make it in beach volleyball.
Right. Now, you spoke about coaches, and we've actually, just before we started recording, spoke about the future. You're the beach volleyball coach. Can you just talk a little bit about the coaching structure and what that might look like for an individual athlete to come in? How many coaches would they expect to work with? And, is one person in charge of one thing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's definitely something that is still evolving as we speak. So as some of you might know, Paul Smith, who is from Mollymook, beautiful Mollymook, came into Volleyball Australia a while ago, a few months, I want to say. I'm not exactly sure. And with him, one of his tasks is to get a more integrated program, I think, or that's what it feels like to me. And one of his really good ideas is that we have started to really create one big coach pool. So rather than me just doing beach and someone else just doing indoor, we're actually all starting to morph into this really versatile coach pool where everyone still has their specialties and stuff you're really good at. So for me, for example, I'm really good at jump landing mechanics. It's a really specific thing. I did a graduation project on it back when I was in uni. So generally, if an athlete has a problem with that, I'll be very keen to help out because it's something I'm good at. But my colleagues obviously have different specialties. So as we become this big coach pool, it's actually enabling us to work much more individualized with the athletes because we can actually use our own strengths without being stuck to, oh, but it's not my discipline or not my gender, which is really awesome. So
that's great.
Normally you would be like working with, I would say at least 4 full-time coaches who all have different ideas to bring to you on a daily basis.
Yeah, right on. But in terms of maybe the top level, does a coach have one specific coach that might be their case manager, or is there, in terms of leadership, if an athlete has, I don't want to say an issue, but they want to talk to a coach specifically that might have their case, is there one coach that might work with them a little bit more, or is it generally speaking, you're working with a whole medley of coaches?
Generally speaking, it'll be a whole medley of coaches, but there'll always be an option. In that sense, actually, you will get 4 case managers because everyone will be available for a meeting with you. And maybe you meet with one coach every week and with the other coach once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And maybe with one coach, you discuss more life outside of volleyball, study, how that's going. And with one coach, you're more volleyball specific. So we're actually able to be much more versatile in our servicing because we have that coach pool.
Yeah, nice. I love it. Well, before we move on, you said the A word, academics. Let's peel it back. I really, because one of my passions is strength and conditioning. I'd love to talk to you. You spoke about 3 times a week, which I love, and you spoke about actually building a better athlete. And one of the, dare I call it, mistakes that I made is I just wanted to lift heavy weights, and I thought the heavier weight I lifted, the better volleyball player I would be. And unfortunately, I was very mistaken with that
I was going to
concept.
say, you found out that was not the case.
I got really big. I might have won at something else. I probably should have played rugby, but how can you talk to us a little bit about the strength and conditioning and maybe the team that they work with, or are we working with specific people? Like maybe talk a little bit more about the S&C program.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a head of S&C, Andrew Heffernan, who's a really good guy who has a background in, I'm a foreigner, so it's going to be something footy. So I'm not sure if it's rugby union or maybe AFL. I'm really sorry, Andrew, if you hear this. I don't know, but
no one will hold you to it.
He's been a professional athlete in a slightly different sport. He's worked with Tennis Australia, and he's been really good because he came in with us during at the start of the year and didn't necessarily have a volleyball background, but he became so good at understanding what a volleyball athlete needs as compared to what a athlete needs. So we find that volleyball athletes, like you said, we don't want them to become too heavy and just focus on gaining muscle mass all the time. But there is this tipping point where if they're too weak, they actually are more likely to get injured. So he's really good at finding that balance. And what he does is he tests our athletes, I want to say once every month, maybe once every 6 weeks. And depending on the results of your testing on the force plates, so that's testing how high you jump, how much force goes through your joints, he actually decides what kind of programming you're going to get for that next block. So he's super specific and individual with that. Yeah, so we're really lucky to have him as part of our program.
That's great. Well, for anyone who knows and appreciates gyms, when you walk into the AIS gym, it's heaven on earth for the gym rats.
So good, right?
It's an amazing facility. And then maybe going into not necessarily the physio side, but recovery is a really hot topic. And I find that, the harder you push yourself, the more you have to focus on recovery. Are there any, ice baths or any extra activities that you guys incorporate to make sure the athletes are recovering well?
Look, if I wanted to sell this program to you, I would say, yes, there's a great recovery center. It has hot baths, ice baths, recovery boots. all of that. But the truth is the best recovery is sleep and nutrition. So we actually spend a fair bit of time on educating our athletes about sleep and nutrition. So we actually do heaps of workshop around, we call them behavioral change. So yes, it's sleeping, it's nutrition, but it's bigger. It's how do you build habits that are going to get you to perform better at a sustainably high level. But yes, we also have really great recovery facilities. So if that's what you're after.
Yeah, well, ice baths have become a serious fad. I've been known to get into a garage freezer full of ice. Anyways, you're talking my language there. So I didn't actually think we'd talk about it this early, but one of the things that we've initiated the conversation on, which is more about that personal development, being better off the ball. If you're not on the court, especially right now during COVID, how can we improve ourselves? How can we improve our physicality, our minds, so that when we do get back on the court, we can be better for it. So you spoke about habit change. Let's dive into that one a little bit, because we're moving into a time where we're going to start educating a little bit more on our side. What maybe that education looks like on that end, and maybe how do you manage that with the athletes?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a really hot topic at the moment, because a lot of athletes are sort of finding that they're not really progressing as much, because if they're not recovering, then you can't train as hard and all that. So we usually find that when athletes get here, at first they think they can conquer the world with 3 hours of sleep, and they will be very humble after a week of that, because it doesn't end very well. We have a really cool team of specialists, and that's one of the advantages of being at the AIS. They have specialists that work with different sports. So we have a recovery specialist who knows everything about sleep, sleeping habits. How do you make sure you go to bed at the same time, but also how do you increase your sleep quality? Then we've got a nutritionist who works with us, who's actually a former elite athlete as well.
Great.
And so those specialists actually, they do workshops together. So they combine their disciplines to teach our athletes about how they can create those, we call them high performance behaviors. Those behaviors that make you a better athlete, but also really a more successful and functioning human being, I would say.
Perfect. Well, for those that are listening, know that we're going to be getting into that space. So when we bring that up and we start talking about how habits are critical to performance, you guys know that the AVA is paying attention to that. So we're doing our best to set you guys up for a win. We're not just trying to be your parents until you go to bed earlier. We're actually interested in higher performance. Okay. So we're not trying to be poopy pants here. Let's shift focus to the academic side. So just as a program, there are some athletes that are still in high school potentially, or some athletes that are in university or studying to some degree. How do you guys support athletes balance their academics with their training?
Look, we would be dreaming if we'd say that we think that everyone can earn a heap of money when they play volleyball for the rest of their lives, because that's probably not going to happen. So even though, yes, we are a full-time training environment, and it's really, really important to us that you develop yourself to your full potential, we also recognize that volleyball is not all you are. So yes, we really value educating you academically as well while you're here. And so most of our athletes actually either go to school or go to uni while they live in Canberra. And I think for us, the exceptions to that are the athletes who really want to go and become a student athlete in the US. Because if you want to become a student athlete in the US, you can't actually start studying in Australia. That impacts your eligibility, which is a word I hate because it has so many consonants and I cannot say it to save my life. But it's basically, if you start studying in Australia, the chances of you getting recruited in the US are much lower. So when athletes already know that they might want to go down that college pathway, they tend to not study while they're in Canberra just to maximize their chances. But any other athlete is definitely studying.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes tons of sense. And then, before we move on, talking about the program, there's got to be some fun in there somewhere, lifestyle management, you're not only on the court, or you're not only studying. Any activities in Canberra or in around the AIS, or any good pastimes where athletes generally hang out or spend some time?
Look, obviously, bring a group of teenagers together and they're gonna have some fun whether you facilitate it or not. So the AVA is no exception to that. But we do really enjoy the times where we, especially in summer season, when we put on a little beach volleyball tournament locally and then we all have a barbecue together afterwards.
Nice.
Those little things that are generally just the best times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And each one of the interviews that we had over the last couple of weeks, Arash, Nemo, Ethan, they all spoke about the culture and how fantastic it was, and how some of the call it the veterans, or people who've been there, or for some time before, had supported them, worked with them, and how friendly everyone was. So can you just talk a little bit about the culture in the AVA? I know, over time it's evolved, but what's a top level concept of the culture at AVA?
Look, we could write a book about that, because the history of this program is so big, right? We have people working here who, for example, Russ Borjo is currently coaching at the program, and he'll start a conversation with, back in 1978, we had this cohort. And we're all sitting there going, I wasn't even born, Russ. I'm not sure what you want from me in this one. But I think, yes, there's a big history of the program, which really helps us in certain things, because we have such a history that we want to make our history proud. So we want to be a part of something bigger. We want to be part of a legacy. But as you said, we're constantly evolving. So stuff that was good enough for us a few years ago is now no longer good enough, because we're always pushing and wanting to get to the next step. So maybe sometimes in the past, everything was just really fun. And now we're going, well, hold on a second. It's still a high performance program. And if we want to become better than before, we're going to have to make some sacrifices that we haven't made before. So I guess the culture is what we make of it, and hopefully what the next cohort makes of it. And hopefully we just keep building and building.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. Constantly growing and building off of the shoulders of giants. And then maybe one last one with regards to the program before we dive into the volleyball and beach volleyball specifics. Obviously athletes graduate from the program, or they wind up leaving. What's the life cycle of an AVA athlete? How long are you looking to have that person involved in the program? And maybe what are some of the ways that athletes either graduate from that program or wind up leaving?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. And the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. And
of course it does. Yeah.
But I think generally speaking, we've got three big pathways out of the AVA. So the first one is we can move on to the beach developing volleyball. And they're a relatively new program. It's basically the bridge between the AVA and the senior beach volleyball. So in Adelaide, we already have a squad up and running for the men's, where young athletes coming out of the AVA or coming out of a different pathways program actually join in and see if they can bridge the gap to the senior program in 1 or 2 or 3 years. And then the second graduation path would be US college, which is actually these days, historically it's mainly an indoor pathway, but there's been heaps of beach volleyball programs popping up, especially on the women's side. And that's generally a really good place for our athletes, because they get to be a student and an athlete at the same time. So getting educated while also getting more volleyball experience is a really good developmental opportunity. And then the third option would be to go on an indoor pro contract somewhere in Europe, which is actually something that every year we send a few athletes over there, and it's been something that on the men's side has become so popular as a developmental pathway. Whereas on the women's side, we see that women tend to be, and I hate to say this because I'm a woman, but tend to be a bit more risk averse. So they're like, oh, I don't know, it seems pretty scary. And the men are like, oh yeah, I'll go sit in Hungary for a year while I don't speak the language. I don't care.
We learned about that journey last week. Yeah.
Yeah. And I forgot the rest of your question. Sorry.
No, that's all right. No, you laid all three down, and I'd love to say shout out to Emily Heinzelman, who I forget what program she got recruited to, but she played with us this
Tulane.
last year and had an awesome year for the beach. Sorry, what program was it?
Tulane, I think.
Tulane, yeah, fantastic stuff. So I know there's definitely some athletes that are listening here that are interested and might even have some locked in contracts overseas. So great to hear that those are some of the pathways. And, do you guys support the athletes in those? Is there any resources where you guys are able to help the athletes, support them in some level of finding a contract, or are you guys more so involved on the site and then there's other people, third parties, that kind of thing that support?
We actively support them, and because we see that the AVA for us is always a temporary place. You're never supposed to stay there. So that actually comes back to your question about the lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
For us, the AVA is a means to an end. So we are training a lot, but here in Australia, compared to some other countries and continents, there's not a whole lot of competition at a high level going on. So if you go to European countries, for the indoor, they will play competition every weekend at a really high level, whereas our AVL is not every weekend. Do you know what I mean? And it's totally, it makes sense because this country is gigantic. So that would be completely unfeasible. But it does mean that as athletes, we are going to get to a stage where we need to compete at a high level structurally to get better. And so we would have to leave Australia to do that. And so all of those pathways for us are ways to support the athlete by saying, all right, you've trained full time for a few years now. Usually I want to say 2, sometimes it's 1.5, sometimes it's 3, but anywhere in that sort of range. But then you're going to have to get out there and show yourself in a competition and see what it's like to get challenged on a weekly basis and not on a monthly basis, because that's very different and it takes a bit of time to adjust to it. But yeah, it's a great experience.
I love how you said that, because drawing from my own experience, moving from an amateur to a professional, it's not just about playing great once. You have an amazing showing at a national championships, like awesome, great, right? Not taking anything away, but what if there was a tournament the next week? Could you have maintained that performance the next week? And then all of a sudden you're connecting a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks to a month on the road. And now all of a sudden, you got back to back games and that's your season. Then you got to go into the championships and then you're playing playoffs. And then all of a sudden you got your finals, right? You got to pull a season together. And that's the really important bit, is tying that together, where it's not just about training. And this is by no means a critique on the culture in Australia, but there's a lot of training environments. And unfortunately, as a result of COVID, we've lost some of our championships and competitions. It's really important to not only train, but to also compete. So I love that you said that. That's great. Well, let's move into more of the volleyball specific stuff. Okay. So let's get it a little bit more into how you guys approach volleyball. And maybe that's probably the best place to start. Let's separate into 2 quick conversations. How do you approach beach volleyball and how do you approach volleyball development? And that's a tough question. That's a big one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously we try to not make such a big distinction because the emphasis is on creating better volleyball athletes regardless of the discipline. I guess if you would look at our stuff, we would probably say that we use each discipline for a specific purpose. So beach volleyball for us, it is one of the reasons it's a priority is because it is such a great learning experience, because you have to do all the skills. You can't get away with just being good at passing or just being good at setting or just being good at blocking. You actually have to do all the skills. So any gaps you have in your general skill development, they're gonna get pulled up really quickly just because you have to perform all those skills. And then for indoor, we love indoor because it has higher ball speed. So it actually trains our reaction and our decision making and our what we're looking at, our gaze behavior. So we really use each discipline to, I guess, complement each other rather than seeing it as 2 separate things. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. No, I love it. And, back in Canada, I definitely was a huge advocate for playing beach volleyball and indoors. There's people that just wanted to play beach volleyball. It's like, well, no, you're missing out. Or just want to play indoors. No, there's incredible utilities to both sides of the sport. So I love how you guys work with them together. So maybe let's then look at, if an athlete's going to be coming to the AVA. Now, I understand that there's individual cases and each person has different priorities, but is there a process that you guys go through to try to upskill that athlete and to train them up? Like, what would be the volleyball development cycle of an athlete?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for us, we know which skills are the key performance indicators.
Mm-hmm.
So attacking is number 1, 2, and 3 for us. It is so important because
can I apply? Is it too late?
I mean, you can. You're pretty full, so just go for it. It is so important because we know that at the different levels, it will actually make the difference in performance. So if we look at beach volleyball, an Olympic athlete is going to be a better hitter than someone who plays 1s and 2 stars. And 1 and 2 star players are going to be better hitters than those that only play national tour. So it has a direct correlation with your performance. Whereas the other skills like passing and setting, don't get me wrong, the fundamentals are really important, but they're going to be more of sort of a buy-in. If I can't do it, I can't play, but I need hitting to win.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I guess a lot of our training is always focused on how can we improve hitting in different ways. So how can we hit at our highest point? How can we create a hitting technique that is long-term sustainable for my shoulder, my back? How can we use what we call the kinetic chain? So if we think about a baseball pitcher, you always see them opening up really big and they use their full body to create a sort of whip. And we actually want to create a similar technique in volleyball where we're creating a full body whip rather than just my shoulder trying to power the ball. Can I use my entire body to create a gigantic amount of force without hurting myself?
Mm-hmm. Well, for the senior Phoenix athletes on the call, I talk a lot about that spiral sling. So what we do a lot of, attempts at opening that up with a red band or some of the mobility things. So thank you for reinforcing that. That's great.
You're very welcome, Martin. You're very welcome.
Making me look good here. So from let's just go from a program style. Do you guys look to develop athletes into a certain program style that fits, let's just say from a beach volleyball, volleyroo conversation? Is there a style of play, not just, let's just say hitting, but a style of play that you're developing at the AVA? Or you're just looking to upskill the athletes and really turn them into the best individual athletes possible?
Look, in the end, it's always, you have to find a style that suits the athlete, not an athlete that suits the style.
Yep.
But that being said, what we look at, and this is a discussion we regularly have with the beach volleyroo coaches, so Andrew Schott and Kirk Pittman, we're very fortunate to be in close contact with them. So we talk to them all the time about the directions the game is moving towards and what they think is going to be necessary to get an Olympic medal in 2028 and 2032 in Brisbane. And one of the things they say all the time is the game is becoming quicker, more physical, and you need to become a better hitter and server. So all those things, you see that the Australian women's team, Taliqua and Maria Fay, they really like to spread the play and play to over on 2, so they're overloading the blocker. And we're expecting that the rest of the world is going to do a similar thing, and they're going to play quicker sets, and they're not just going to play this old school up and down style all the time. There might be a time and a place for that, but we're expecting that game to move almost more towards the indoor side, where the blocker really needs to work a lot to actually get good form while still moving and while having to race for the life to get to the right spot at the right time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all great. Well, and you say it's a focus on the individual athlete, but at what point in time, do they start either pairing with somebody or looking to compete? How does an athlete who's training, let's just say focusing on beach volleyball, at what point in time are they a part of a team? At what point in time are they competing? Because I remember last year there was some AVA athletes who were competing as teams at the Manly Championships. So there was some things happening. Like, how do you guys approach competing in events?
Yeah, look, in an ideal world where everyone would live in the same place and we could just pair whoever with whoever. We would actually look outside of the AVA just as much as inside the AVA to pair people, because it's such a rich learning experience to play with multiple people. There's so much to be said for learning how to set different hitters and how to pass for different people, and there's so much to be said for that. And at the same time, the other side of that is it is really valuable to learn how to become a good teammate week in, week out. For example, if you and I play together, Martin, and the first tournament we win, everything's amazing, we totally feel where like, oh, you're there, I'm here, it's going to be great, and then the next week we play awful, then it might be really easy for us to go, oh, you know what, our pairing was never meant to be, I'm going to play with someone else. Whereas no, you need to learn how to fix something if it's broken, because it can be good, but it's not going to be good with you just like snapping your fingers being, oh, all right, yeah, we got it. So as AVA staff, we will actually look at what the individual athlete needs. So are they someone who needs a partner week in, week out that's going to teach them how to become better as a team and not just and I guess how to invest in a team. Whereas some other athletes, they might, if they have a set partner, that partner might start compensating for some of their weaknesses. So then we'll say, we'll actually pair you with someone who doesn't let you get away with that stuff. So it's, again, sorry to be repetitive, it's very individual. But yeah, those are some of the considerations, I guess, for us.
Yeah, well, we're, for us at a state level, from just the beach side, these are great considerations for our athletes to know, when we're looking at pairing athletes and when we're looking at doing that. I'm a huge advocate for the athlete who knows how to manage themselves, and wants to seek out a partner and are advocating for themselves. So everything that you're talking about is, innately, we want people to learn how to be able to manage that themselves. Well, flipping into the indoor side, obviously training environment super important, and we've spoken about the competition. To what degree is there, a weekly competition, intra-squad match, or how does the indoor side, progress into some level of competitiveness?
Yeah, well, actually, we scrimmage every Friday on both surfaces. So either you're scrimmaging on the sand or you're scrimmaging on the hard court. So that's really good as well. And on the indoor side, on Sundays we play state league. I think similar to most states who play state league on Sundays. So for us, that's no different. We play in the inaugural Canberra Volleyball League, which is or Capital Volleyball League, or whatever it's called, something with a C. Sorry, ACT Volleyball.
All good, but you guys get some good competition in that.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess if we don't get it in, we'll find a way to make it work. So for us, we're not just training for the sake of training. So we're always on the lookout to create more scrimmage opportunities, because that's the way you learn eventually as an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we get back in, we're certainly interested in hopping back on the bus and coming in for some games, because that was great for us. That's all.
Keen to have you.
Thank you. That's a lot about the program itself, and I'm sure if people have any specific questions, please feel free to answer them. I've seen quite a few questions pop up very specifically about the application process, so let's move into that one. First and foremost, let's go at a meta level. Let's fly at a high altitude. What are you guys looking for in the AVA for athlete applicants?
Well, I mean, not to aim high, but if someone who can get us a medal at 2032 would apply, that would be great.
There might be a couple of those people on this call, so that's fantastic. I'm glad you said that.
Excellent. No, but like, in all seriousness, obviously we in the AVA, we're not necessarily looking for athletes who are the best in their age group now. We're looking for athletes who could be the best in 8 years. And that is no easy task for anyone to predict that. But I guess we look for certain attributes. So what we say is either someone needs to be really athletic, like be an exceptionally great mover. So then we talk about changing direction, sprinting mechanics, hitting mechanics. If you're really, really athletic, that is a massive bonus. If you learn new skills well, that is definitely something we're looking for. but we are also looking for taller athletes with bigger wingspans, because we see that the game is moving towards this space where defenders on the men's side are becoming at least 195 centimeters. So I have no idea about feet and inches, so I'm going to leave that up to you.
Up there.
But let's say pretty tall. So I guess we're really looking for blockers well over 2 meters. And on the women's side, that will probably translate to, if you look at the Olympic gold medalist, Alex Kleinman, she's about 195, 197, like seriously tall. So obviously any athlete with those sort of attributes, super interesting to us, and we really encourage them to apply. But other than that, we're also looking for athletes who are really competitive and are really intrinsically motivated to develop themselves. So if you find yourself being like you're good once you get there, but you're not really that into the sport, it's going to be hard to train every day if you don't really love it. If you don't have that drive, that passion to become a little bit better every day, it's just going to be hard to train full time. So I guess that would sort of be my list. What do you reckon? Did I miss anything?
No, that's fantastic. And I would say that, and I saw it pop up, it's when when people always want the tall athlete, right? It makes sense. And what I would say to that is, well, would height ever be a limiting factor for someone to get selected to the AVA? Now that's a tough question to ask, because at a certain point in time, I'm sure that would be the case. But at what degree, I would say, I'll let you answer the question. I was just about to do it, but that the mental versus the physical, right? That it's a constant balance between those two.
Look, it's a difficult question in the sense that at the end of the day, Maria Fay just won a silver medal, and she's 173. So I definitely think there's something to say for all the other skills. Beach volleyball is still a sport of skill, not just power. It's not the one who lifts most in the gym is going to win an Olympic medal. You need to be able to read the game and to be a really good hitter, to be a really good teammate. But all the skills of reading the game, they're much easier to teach than teaching someone to jump 2 meters high because they're really short, right? So will we ever say no just because you're too short? Definitely not. But you will have to have something else that makes us think that you're a standout athlete for the future and not just now.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and that's the reality of it. That's sport. That's competitive sport. If you want to be one of the best people in the world, and you're competing against taller athletes and you're a little bit shorter, well, what are you bringing to the table to make up for that? So it all makes sense. So understanding that, let's go through a little bit of the process of the application. We don't necessarily need to go through the details. I'm sure that's laid out online, but let's just say someone applies right now. Can you take us through what the timeline is and level of expectation on your side of, hey, okay, we've received that application. What happens next?
Yeah, for sure. So the application deadline is end of August, I want to say. So usually we will need a bit of time after that to actually go through all the applications, right? Because we know that you guys put time in it to actually put that in. So we're not just going to be like, oh, Alex, no. We are going to go through your entire application. We're going to look at your highlight reels. But for 4, 5, 6 people to look at everyone's highlight reels, last year we had well over 100 applicants. It takes us a bit of time. So generally we use that sort of September time slot to go through everyone, and then our selection process starts. So end of September, beginning of October, all coaches sit together with the senior team coaches, with our program directors, and we look at all the lists, and everyone is putting names forward, and then we start juggling names. So about, I want to say the mid to end October is when all the offers will be going out to those who we would like to offer an AVA spot to.
Right on. And then from that offer, then, is there a specific time where that person would start with the program? Does everybody arrive at a certain day, that kind of thing, or is it kind of individual case dependent?
We generally like to start early January, and it kind of depends on some school holiday dates and what the date is from the first competition. So if the competition that you are going to play as an AVA athlete is January 8th, then we're not going to get you in January 7th and then be like, good luck, I hope you're going to be really good. We'll generally want to see you for a few days, make sure you get your physio screening in, your medical screening, so we know that you're healthy and not injured and that you're actually safe to play. So we try to get everyone in at least a week before the first competition, but that'll have to be event dependent, I guess. So there's still a bit of room there, but let's say early January is usually a good time.
Got it. No, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Lauren just fired me over a couple of great questions here. So I'm just going to read through a few. They're within the scope of what we're talking about right now. So is there a minimum maximum age for athletes to apply?
It's still going to be case by case. So not ruling everyone out. We definitely have a strong preference for you to already be 18, just because on the duty of care side of things, it makes a big difference for us. But that being said, if you are 16 and really outstanding, then that's not going to be a barrier for us. It just means that we have to talk to your parents and we need to consider the different factors that are at play. Where are you going to live? How are you going to do that with your schoolwork? And just making sure that the academic side is really well covered while we make you move interstate for volleyball.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Maximum is a good question as well. Like, obviously being European, I always have to think for a second, because us Europeans, we start volleyball when we're like 7 years old. So by the time we're 14, we're basically pros. Yeah. Whereas in Australia, I feel like what I love about Australians, they play so many different sports, which I think is awesome. Like the amount of athletes that I work with that have played netball, footy, hockey, soccer, all of the different things. But it just means that volleyball might come into the picture a bit later. I would like to say maybe like 20, 21 would probably be late-ish. Like you could definitely apply, but above 21 would be a bit more of an exception. But that being said, if you have a really good reason why we should invite you, then go for your life.
Love it. Amazing. What options are there for athletes that receive an offer to join AVA but are unable to move to Canberra as their family wants them to stay in their school in Sydney?
Yeah, that's one that we've been thinking about a lot. So when you're under 18, there's basically, I would say, if we decide to offer you a spot in AVA and you can't take it up for a completely valid reason, like you're in school and your parents don't want you to move out yet, we generally like to invite you over to the AVA from time to time. So maybe it's your school holidays where you come in for a little training camp. Maybe it is coming in for a beach camp before a certain event. So for example, say we have an event in Adelaide, then usually the AVA will go over there a few days earlier to train at the beach in Adelaide. And then we invite you over as well. So you can join the AVA training group for just little bouts of time. Maybe it's a 3 or 4 day situation. And then the other option is if you decide not to apply for the AVA because you're still 16 and you're still in school, then I would still encourage you to reach out to us through JDP camps. So join one of our junior development camps, because we as AVA coaches, we run those camps as well. So we still get to see you, we get to track your development, have a chat to you. So you're not out of the picture if you don't decide to apply for the AVA.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have a quick discussion about those JDP camps when we kind of conclude with the application process. So for those that are like, wait, what's that? I didn't get an invite to that. So we'll get there. We'll have a chat.
Don't you worry.
Yeah. And there's someone else who had wrote in a question around the AVA Light program, and that pretty much suits that one, right? The conversation around, hey, I can't move there. Well, let's still try to find a way to create a relationship, still try to find a way to play, show yourself, build a relationship with the coaches, and try to be involved. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. Interesting one here. Due to COVID and being in a lockdown hotspot, I haven't been able to effectively capture footage for the highlight athlete video, and my ability to participate in competitions have been limited. For the AVA 2022 application, would this negatively impact my selection for the program? or would this be considered? Now, there are a lot of athletes on the call right now who pretty much live into that. And I'm sure there's a lot of athletes in Australia who live into that as well. So I think that's a pretty apropos question.
Yeah, and look, in a perfect world, you would find a way to get footage, but with these COVID restrictions, we do not want you to break any rules to get footage. All right, let me put that out there on the recording. I am not encouraging you to break rules of the lockdown to get footage.
Seconded. I second that 100%.
We are definitely understanding that, especially on the competition side, you are not going to get as much footage from this year as in another year, and that's okay. That's just how it is, and everyone's in the same boat as you, so don't you worry about that. I think what we do like to see is you getting creative. So can you instead build your own vertex, or can you build an apparatus that measures how high you jump, or can you touch the wall and then show us on the recording how good you can jump? Can you find a net somewhere that is maybe, if that's within your restrictions, I'm not sure what's allowed. We are allowed 1 hour outside every day.
We're still allowed to exercise outside, no more than 2 people.
Oh, yeah.
No more than 5 kilometers outside of your LGA. So, for some, I actually know that there's quite a few people who are still playing beach volleyball 1v1 right now.
Perfect. So can you find a net that is an actual normal height? So can you find a 243 net for men and a 224 net for women? Show me on the video that is actually that height, because if you're going to bounce the ball and the net is like 10 centimeters lower, then don't try to play me. So I want to see the height of the net. But then if you can get your partner to just set you a bunch of balls and show us how good you can hit on that net, maybe that's a way to convince us that we should take you. So yeah, like, be creative. We really like proactive athletes. So we love it when you come up with stuff and when you show us a different way that maybe we hadn't thought about yet, but is very convincing to us. Like, go for your life.
Mm-hmm. Sport is problem solving. So that's the challenge. There we go.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay. Last one from this little batch here. And I encourage everybody, if you do still have questions, fire away. We got, let's just say, another 10 minutes on the call. So we'll still be canvassing for questions. But how difficult is it to get into a US college in comparison to the pro pathway?
Well, that depends on which college and which pro pathway, right? So there's a bit of overlap there. I would say the better European leagues, which is where some of our men's volleyroos play, that is pretty hard to get into, harder than a US college. But in general, I think what I really like about both pathways is there is something for everyone. So generally, when you graduate outside of the AVA, out of the AVA, you will get a chance to graduate onto something. Yeah, we'll prepare you for that. So whether it's a Div 2, a good Div 2 college in the US, or whether it's a lower level Division 1, there's different sort of grades in the US, and we're generally pretty good at finding one that suits your level, but also a bit of what suits you. So if you're like a summer beachy person, we're not going to send you to, I don't know, Chicago and to just shiver in the cold for 9 months out of the year. Yes, volleyball is important, but there's a little thing called happiness in life, and we tend to pay some attention to that as well when we can.
Yeah, so UCLA, right? UCLA, let's do it.
UCLA, Pepperdine.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, understanding that applications are open and understanding that maybe actually we'll do a quick little plug. Where can athletes find that application?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I was kind of hoping that you would help me with that one, Martin, but I hear you're just throwing me under the bus with this one.
I'm just throwing you questions. I'm just the stupid interviewer.
Look, on the Volleyball Australia website, you're definitely going to find a plug that sends you straight to the AVA applications. But when you're in doubt, the AVA Facebook page is usually a good place to start as well.
Awesome. And what I'll do is in the follow-up of this, we'll include the recording and we'll share all necessary links. So you don't have to do a mad scramble for that. No problem. We got another question. You already got it. Amazing.
I'm a mad scrambler.
We'll fire that out to everybody. What's the average intake amount into the AVA per year? That's an interesting question.
You mean how many athletes do we?
Yeah. So how many athletes
year?
would you take in per year?
It really depends. Currently our cohort sizes are at a maximum, like real maximum of 20 per gender. So in general, we are moving in the direction of less is more. So it's a simple, I guess, equation, but the more athletes we have, the less time we have for each athlete. So we're not too fussed on filling all 20 spots. So it's more about us actually being convinced that this athlete is unique and has got something to offer that we haven't seen yet in our squad, or it's something that we're like, Australian volleyball needs this person and they can only get it with us in this full-time training environment. So if that's 2 this year, it's 2, but if that's 6 this year, it's 6. So it's a hard question to answer, but yeah, I guess it depends on the quality of the applications and those video highlight reels. I'm really curious to see now.
Yeah, time for people to get taping those highlights. I love it.
Exactly.
Well, let's shift to the last topic of conversation. And I believe that there's a few people on this call who are from other states, which is great. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a lot of younger athletes who are here who might be interested in the AVA. You know, they're just starting to think big. They're a few years away. You know, what does the pathway look like? And you've mentioned Paul Smith already, who's done a great job of starting to integrate some new ideas into this. You know, let's talk about the pathway to the AVA, which clearly involves us, but where are some ways that athletes can engage with you guys as coaches or try to get on your radar?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's multiple ways to go about it. So obviously, what not everyone realizes is Volleyball New South Wales and Volleyball Australia actually have the same purpose. We want to help athletes. We want to develop the sport. We want to help develop the best of the best athletes into representing Australia at the highest stages, right? We all want the same thing. Now, if I'm a local athlete, I'm going to go to Volleyball New South Wales first, or maybe I'm going to go to my local club, and then we move through the stages. But that means that as soon as you get involved with Volleyball New South Wales and obviously the Phoenix program that I'm super excited about you guys starting, it's unbelievably cool. So obviously getting engaged in the Phoenix program will actually is the first step to get on the radar, because you will call me and be like, Anna, this athlete I have, like, you've got to see this person. And then I'll be like, all right, give me the footage. And you'll be like, I can't, it's lockdown. But that's a different conversation. So you don't necessarily have to talk to a VA employee to get seen by VA. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to get across. But the other thing, obviously, is those junior development camps that we touched on earlier, is something that Volleyball Australia organizes to get as many kids as possible from the state in certain age ranges, just for us to I guess, to interact with all of you and to see who's out there, to see who's really keen to play the sport. And then if there's any athletes that stand out, then great. If not, we're still there to give you a great experience and to give you a little snippet of what it's like to, what's ahead of you, I guess. Like, what could you be working on with your volleyball to become a little bit better, and then a little bit better and a little bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. So those JDB camps, now obviously we're all in a bit of a pickle here as a result of COVID, but generally speaking, those JDB camps, do you guys shoot to have those at a certain period of time? Are those like a quarterly or twice a year type of thing? You know, what's your plan with those JDB camps?
Yeah, I mean, we've had about 26 plans and all of them have landed in the bin by now due to COVID. So plan 27, I am not sure. In general, I think what we like to say is we like to be in every state at the very least once a year with some sort of JDP camp. And then I guess depending on the opportunities we have, for example, New South Wales is obviously for us, it's a really good place because you guys put on heaps of tournaments. You usually have a beach volleyball national tour, like any type of major event that we could potentially tie a camp to, that will be easy for us. So as New South Wales, you might get more JDP camps than Tasmania. Sorry if there's anyone from Tasmania. I really apologize. Would love to go over there, but you guys won't let me because,
we'll take it.
close the border.
That's all right, Tasmania. We'll take it.
Yeah, but if that makes sense, so it's really state dependent, but you guys are in a good spot for sure.
Yeah, right on. And then there's actually just a question came through, how does someone get an invitation to a JDP camp? And I have a feeling that involves me.
Yeah, I was going to say that should be yours to answer, shouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And, I want to say that this is a new work in progress. Obviously, JDP has been around, but there's been new efforts for us to work with Volleyball Australia and Volleyball Australia to work with the states to get more TID happening locally. So that's an evolving conversation, and then COVID threw a very interesting spanner into the books. But we're constantly going to be looking at ways, and from a Phoenix side, from a youth side, we're going to be involving more TID specific things, let's call them camps, and inviting AVA coaches to participate in those. Obviously, we got to be able to get back onto the court to be able to do that. But we're actively sending all of our state team lists wind up into the JDP database. So just by simply making it into the state team, you will be a part of those nominations. So for those who are, let's just say, in our very successful 2020-21 beach volleyball campaign, all those athletes, we do our best to nominate them. We just need to be able to have those opportunities to hit the court. So if you weren't on the state team, then maybe reach out and give us a good reason to nominate you. But for the most part, we're constantly looking through our state team programs, beach and indoors, to be able to nominate athletes.
See, you nailed it. I'm not sure why I'm even here, Martin. You can just do it by yourself.
We're trying to hand up athletes to you guys, and then you guys are handing athletes up to the top range, because we got some hardware. We got some hardware to win in upcoming Olympics. I tell you, we got an amazing Australian girls team, which I regret to say beat out our Canadians in the quarterfinals. That one stung big time, but they showed a great way, and I got some exciting products to launch in the future for our athletes. We're going to do some more of these series with some, let's just say, some athletes who have some hardware. But what I will say, and maybe this will be in closing, we can go back and forth here, Anna, is where do the 2032 Olympics fit into this conversation?
Left, right, and center. For us, obviously, as AVA, one of our, I would say, our sole purpose is to develop athletes who could become closer and closer to those 1 and 2 athletes who are going to get us a medal at 2032. So for sure, we are always looking for long-term potential. So that's why I said, you don't have to be the best in your age group now to apply, but there needs to be something about you. And whether it's the fact that you just saw the Olympics, you're like, yep, that's going to be me one day, or whether it's you're really tall, or you were really good at all these other sports, but they were not as cool as beach volleyball, because I know that they're not. So, there has to be something about you. And for us, 2032, I'm not sure. So, fun little anecdote. I was stuck in hotel quarantine when the 2032 announcement came out. So I was celebrating by myself, and it was not as great as I hoped it would be. Let's just say that.
It's tough to high five other people when you're in quarantine for 14 days.
Exactly. Yeah. I was actually in Brisbane, coming back from the Asian Junior Championships, where I actually took a few New South Wales athletes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the names of Stephanie Fayez and Jessie Mann, who both did an amazing job. So yeah, we were all in one hotel room by ourselves celebrating 2032, but boy, it is an exciting time to be an Australian, almost Australian. You and I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm still pretending. It's going to take me a couple more years to learn how to speak the language, but 2032 is really, really close, really, really close. And I love reflecting on my life and where was I, 10 years before 2012, and I was already playing the sport. So logically, the cohort that's going to be leading the nation at that time is playing the sport currently, which is a really exciting conversation for everyone on this call.
Yeah, and if I can leave people with this, do not be afraid to dream big. I know it might sound completely ridiculous when you say it now. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to become an Olympic gold medalist. It might sound ridiculous. People might laugh at you, but it all starts with someone who is not scared to dream big and just put it out there and start working towards it and just chipping away. It only takes one dream, and it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I love it. Well, if I listen to all the people that laughed at me when I said that from a small town on Vancouver Island that I'd play beach volleyball for Team Canada, the Olympics, yeah, I can absolutely say do not listen to those people because they have no idea how special each one and every one of you guys are. Well, let's end it there. Actually, no, Lauren sent me one more question. It's very specifically to the JDP camps. Just are those camps for juniors, or are they similar to the 18 plus, or what would be the age group for that JDP camp?
There's obviously different age groups. In general, I think, well, you might actually have to correct me on this one because we haven't run JDP camps for so long in COVID, but I want to say our age ranges are generally about 2 years apart. So it will be under 16s, under 18s. And all of that is going to be on the website as well, because it shifts each year. So I couldn't tell you right now, but generally it starts at the juniors, but you can still attend a JDP camp when you're already 18 or 19.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. We'll post that information. We'll gather all of that and send it out to everybody. So we don't miss anything. And then what we'll also do is reshare this recording. So we'll save this and make sure that everybody gets it, just in case you guys need to rewind and check out anything else. But any final questions out there from anybody, fire it in the box. Maybe over the next minute or so we can get to it. But if not, just want to say thank you, Anna, for your time. I really, really appreciate you being here. It's so great for us to be able to connect with you guys and hear what's happening in your environments, and for us to get inspired by that and connect in the pathway. And absolutely, the better that we're able to work together, the better Australian volleyball will be, but the more rich the local athletes will be able to be as well. So thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. And just to anyone who was on this call, I'm super happy. Like, once things start to open up again, and they will, I know it doesn't feel that way, but it will definitely open up again. Once we start having these tournaments and you see me walking around, you will always see me because I'm always wearing a green polo and I have a cup of coffee in my hand. I'm very easy to find. Don't be afraid to come up and introduce yourself. Be like, hi, you haven't met me yet, but I am Martin and I just really wanted to have a chat. Because I'm always super happy to just have a chat or to come look at your game or say hi. So don't be shy, just come up, have a chat. And yeah, just reach out whenever you want, really.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. I think that's about it, Anna. No questions have come through. So hopefully we've done a good job of covering all the bases and painting a really nice picture of the AVA. But for anybody, if you want more information, we will look to offer all of that in the follow-up email. Do you feel comfortable us providing your email, Anna? Just in that, is that all right? Okay.
Sure.
Wonderful. Well,
I will say though, I am better at drinking coffee than replying to emails. So give me a bit of time.
well, you've assimilated well. You've assimilated well in Australia, because I'm still learning to drink as much coffee as the Aussies.
Yeah, I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Good one. Well, let's end it there. Big thank you to everybody. Appreciate it. And Anna, why don't you just stick around for a little bit and we'll do a little debrief offline here. Okay.
All good. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. We will be in touch.
Thanks very much, Anna.
No worries, Tim.
Thank you.
No worries.